Ladies and gentlemen, once again, welcome back to Sophie the Fireplace, your favorite spot where stories gather like old friends around the fire and wisdom sometimes comes wrapped in a little bit of sass. Tonight, we sit under the sprawling shade of a mighty mahogany tree listening to Mzee Okello, a teacher, storyteller, and the only person I know who can school you on education reform without a single PowerPoint slide. Here we go. In the shade of a mahogany tree, old Mzee Okello tapped his walking stick thrice on the ochre earth. Children gathered close, their eyes wide, dust curling beneath their sandals like restless spirits. He did not shout. He spoke like the wind talks to the millet fields, soft, sure, and certain. You see, he began, pointing at the horizon, when the river changes course, the fisherman does not keep casting his net where water no longer flows. Heads nodded. Even little Amina stopped plucking at her braids. Education, he said, voice low and thick like a groundnut stew, must be like a river. It must bend when the land curves, it must rise when the rains come, it must dry in places where meaning no longer grows. They listened. Long ago, they brought us a book, he continued, not ours. Its words were cold, its stories wore coats. We tried to walk on those pages, but our feet bled. Still we walked because they said wisdom lived there. A young teacher in the crowd shifted. He knew what Mzee meant. He remembered the ministry memos, reform the curriculum, use the mother tongue. Local context is key. But he also remembered the laughter in the staff room when he suggested teaching algebra in Lusoga. Math doesn't speak village, they had joked. Mzee Okello tapped again. But a people who cannot speak of stars in their language will forever borrow light. He paused, letting the silence settle. They tried to make us forget, he said, told us English was the language of reason, French the tongue of progress. But tell me, he looked around, if you cannot write my mother's name in your curriculum, is that curriculum mine? One boy's hand rose shyly. But didn't the government change it, Grandpa? Mzee smiled, his eyes creasing like old bark. Ah, yes, my grandson, they tried. They are still trying. But change, he whispered, must not only be written in policy, but it must also be sung in classrooms, danced in lessons, breathed in the teachers. He leaned forward, voice heavy with history. Fanon once said, we wear masks, skins black, but minds painted white. That's why some of us fight our own languages. We fear they make us seem less. The breeze stirred, the mahogany tree sighed. But a tree does not fear its roots, Mzee finished, and neither should we. A good education feeds the soil it stands on. It listens to dreams spoken in many tongues. It changes when people change, and above all, it remembers where it came from. Reflecting on what the elder said, I realized that many neckties were unfolding scrolls and calling it a new dawn. They came with the promises wrapped in words like competence, skills, and future readiness. On paper, it gleamed. In classrooms, it stumbled. In one village, no, in many, teachers stood beside blackboards they didn't help shape. Chalk in hand, hearts unsure. One shook his head slowly as he stared at the new timetable. He muttered, "They want us to plant cassava using a hoe we haven't held before?" he muttered. "And no one asked us if our soil was even ready." A headmistress nearby laughed dryly. "What about us?" she asked, waving a letter from the ministry. "They say own the curriculum, but how do we own what we didn't build?" It wasn't just their village. Across the hills and coastlines of the global south, something eerily familiar echoed as classrooms tried to teach futures in languages of past empires. One elder leaned on his cane during this community meeting and said, "They are dressing our children in borrowed clothes again. We tried this before. The uniforms were either too tight or too loose." A hush followed. A young man, freshly trained, rose and asked, "But didn't we say we were decolonizing? Why then do our schools still smell like a Europe that overstayed its welcome?" No one needed to answer. Fanon had spoken years ago, but his words still walked among them like ancestors refusing to be buried. The global south, he warned, had become an expert at mimicry nations, looking in the mirror and seeing someone else's reflection. And so, reforms came curriculum upon curriculum, but without the rhythm of the community drum, without the sweat of teachers, without the wisdom of elders. Mubangizi, a Ugandan writer, had once written of this, that when people are not called to the table, they cannot be expected to participate in the feast. Resistance is not rebellion, sometimes it's a matter of memory. It is worth noting that the soil resists not because it is stubborn, but because it remembers being burned. Curriculum, the elder said, is not a finished cloth, it is woven. Many hands stitch it, teachers, learners, parents, even silence itself. When only a few choose the pattern, the cloth may not provide sufficient warmth for the body. The children of the South do not need a curriculum that imitates. They need one that listens, one that grows like a mauve tree with deep roots, wide shade, room for everyone to gather beneath. They say the future is now. They say the new curriculum is here. They roll out the scrolls with silver tongues, announce it with polished shoes on podiums too far from our blackboards. But down here, where the fan creaks and the walls are sunburnt, where the blackboard still breathes colonial ghosts, we know. A curriculum written without us is a shadow we cannot teach in. They call it competence-based. They say it's modern, responsive, fresh, but no one asked the teacher in Mbale, or the headmistress in Kaduna, or the barefoot learners in Rio. See, they want us to plant with the tools we haven't held, dance to drums we didn't beat, build futures on blueprints drawn in languages that never loved our names. And still they ask, why are teachers resisting? As if resistance isn't wisdom in disguise. As if the soil doesn't remember being burned. Let me tell you what the elders say. Curriculum is not a statue. It is clay. It must be touched by many hands. It must carry the fingerprints of the community. It must hum in the voice of the learners, not just echo the command of the elite. But too often, here in the global south, we wear curricula like second-hand suits, tailored in Paris, London or Lisbon, and expected to walk like kings in them. Fanon warned us. He said, we have become mirrors, looking into ourselves and seeing Europe's face. He called it a mask, but this mask sticks. This mask speaks. And in our classrooms, it whispers, your language isn't enough, your knowledge isn't sharp. Be like them or be left behind. But we are not blank slates. We are not empty bowls waiting for borrowed soup. We are rivers bending to the land. We are drums echoing with purpose. We are knowledge, alive, breathing, native to this soil. So, don't just bring us change in sealed envelopes. Bring us chairs to the table. Bring us the power to shape what we must carry. Bring us the dignity to teach what we know in the tongues that named our grandmothers and our grandfathers. But down here, where the sun meets the blackboard and the chalk dust rises with each erased line we know, a curriculum only lives when the people it serves are allowed to breathe inside it. So, as the sun sets beyond distant halls where silver tongues still speak, we remain in the classrooms, humble, worn, but unyielding. Because the future, real and lasting, is not handed down like a decree. It is grown, slowly, stubbornly, from the roots of our history, our voices, our hands. The dust on our chalkboards may settle, but the fire in our hearts will not. We will shape, we will curve, we will sing the curriculum into being, not as strangers to our own knowledge, but as heirs, as makers, and as keepers. For when education forgets its soul, it forgets its people. And when we reclaim that soul in our languages, our histories, our dreams, then and only then will the future truly begin. Change does not come from afar, dropped in our classrooms like a gift wrapped by strangers. It cannot be poured in two empty vessels from faraway towers. It must be nurtured from the ground where children first open their eyes to learning. It has to grow right here with us, the teachers, the students, the communities who live and breathe this education every day. When a curriculum ignores the language we speak and the stories we carry, it's like trying to plant seed in soil that never been touched. It just won't take root. What we need is a chance to shape what we teach, to bring our voices and our experiences into the conversation. So, learning feels like home, not a foreign place. The classrooms in Mbale, Kaduna, Rio in Brazil, Kisumu, and countless other places are not just places for instruction. They are living ecosystems shaped by culture, language, and history. To ignore this is to build castles in the air, beautiful but fragile, disconnected from the people they are meant to serve. True transformation comes when the curriculum is not imposed but co-created, when it carries the fingerprints of those who teach and learn in it. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for listening. We meet again next time.